so we've been factoring, and one of the reasons we're factoring is in quadratic equations is what we're going to be using today. So we're going to solve quadratic equations. There are actually 4 ways you can solve quadratic equations, probably more than that. There are 4 common ones. We're going to just look at 2 right now, and hopefully later on we'll be able to look at the other 2. So this one comes very naturally. We're going to solve equations by factoring. And in order to solve by factoring, we have to use what's called the zero product property. And let me show you about the zero product property. You'll probably catch on pretty quickly. So I'm going to do some examples right here. Now, this is not in your packet. So if you're at home, you can, I posted it out on Schoology, and you can print it off. You can also just write it on a piece of paper. Just pause when I get to where there's more words. Just pause and copy down what I have. So that would also be an option. Okay, so first off, answer these questions for me. 5 times 0 is equal to 0, right? 0 times 5 is equal to 0. What about 0 times 0? That's also 0, right? Okay, so anything times 0 is going to give you 0. That's what the zero product property is talking about. If an equation is equal to 0, then one or both of the factors must be 0. Okay, so if an equation is equal to 0, so if I start off with it equal to 0, that means that one of these has to be 0 or both. We use that in order to solve by factoring. So look at this example. It's already factored. So remember, this is this times this. So it's this parentheses, this binomial times this binomial. But notice it's equal to 0. So if it's equal to 0, what we can say is either one or both of these is equal to 0. So in order to solve this, I just take each equation and I set it equal to 0. Okay, and I'm going to have the steps for all this in just a second. But I wanted you to see that when 2 things are multiplied, product, when 2 things are multiplied and they equal 0, either one or both of them are equal to 0. And in order to solve quadratic equations, we believe that both of them are. We set both of them equal to 0, and we go from there. Now we're just going to solve this equation. We know how to solve this equation. We add 3, we get x is equal to 3. There's one solution. Here we're going to subtract 7. We get 2x is equal to negative 7. Divide by 2. And we get that x is equal to negative 7/2. So, to this equation, this quadratic equation, these are our 2 solutions. Okay? And a lot of times you'll see that we write the solutions in set notation. So we just make a set notation. And it just depends on the teacher, the class, the book you're using, whatever, on how you write it. These are your 2 solutions. We can write them as a set notation. Now, it's really important that you don't put parentheses because that would be an ordered pair. So make squiggly lines so you know that this is set notation and not an ordered pair. Okay, so given any quadratic equation, if I want to solve by factoring using zero product property, because that's what you have to use, these are the steps we're going to go through. Now, this first one is not going to make a huge difference, and some of these we won't even use right away. Make sure that each equation is equal to 0 and in standard form. That goes to the factoring part, the fact that it has to be in standard form so we can factor. So we have to set it equal to 0. If it's not 0, we have to manipulate. We have to add or subtract. So we have everything on one side, 0 on the other. Then we have to factor completely. Okay? After we have factored, we're going to set each factor, okay, which will be the stuff in parentheses. Okay, so stuff in parentheses is the stuff in parentheses, and we're going to take each one of those and set them equal to 0. So set each factor equal to 0, each parentheses equal to 0, okay? And then we're just going to solve each equation. So these are their steps, and you can see on some of these we're not even going to do all of them. Okay, so step 1, it's already factored. Yay! We don't have to worry about setting it equal to 0, but you do need to always check that. It has to be set equal to 0. Factored completely done. Somebody else did it for us. So now we're going to go to step 3. Set each equal to 0. 5x plus 2 equals 0. X minus 9 equals 0. Solve, go. So solve those equations. You don't need to watch me do that. It's good practice. Go. So when you solve the equation, you got x was equal to negative 2/5 and x was equal to 9. And we can write that in set notation. And we're done. Good. Now on number 2, okay, let's look at it. Make sure the equation is equal to 0. Yes. Is it in standard form? Yes. So now we have to factor completely. To factor completely, first thing we have to do is look to see, is there a greatest common factor? Nope, because this one only has a factor of 1. So we're going to factor completely. So this step 2 is going to be a whole bunch of work here. So we're going to make our x. We're going to multiply 6 times 5. Pull out your calculators. 6 times 35. We get 210. That goes up top. So we have 210. And 1 goes down at the bottom. The factors of 210, well, we know 10 and 21 go in. But that's not going to help us. We only can be 1 apart. Okay? And our sign's all the same. And we have to add. Nope. Sorry, that's a negative 210. My fault. I had a negative 35. So my signs are different. My largest factor has to be positive. So my small one has to be negative. Okay, so we're going to try some things there. 21 minus 10 is 11. I have to be 1 apart. Oh my gosh. So let's go. That's 11 apart. Let's go up higher. So 210 divided by 14. Ha! Look at that. 14. It's 14 and 10. I always get so excited when I find that. When I find that middle term. It is just like, yay! Okay, so I tried 14. Why did I try 14? Because I know 210 is divisible by 7. I knew 7 was too small, so I was like, I'm going to go with 14. And I got lucky. I was right. I didn't get lucky. I used educated guessing. So now I'm going to have 6x squared minus 14x plus 15x is equal to, minus 35. And that is equal to 0. Well, that will come back into play in just a bit. We'll have to set that equal. Okay, so let's factor by grouping. 2x, so I have x, 3x minus 7. Take out a 5. I have 3x minus 7. So I have 3x minus 7 is equal to 2x plus 5. Okay, factor. That was step 2. Yeah, step 2 is a big one. So factor. Now, step 3, set each parentheses equal to 0. So 3x minus 7 equals 0. 2x plus 5 equals 0. Solve. Go. So when you solve that, you got x was equal to 7/3 and x is equal to negative 5/2. Now, this one is a decimal that you could use. This is going to give you repeating. I would rather have the improper fraction. So write it in set notation, 7/3 and negative 5/2. Yeah, maybe should be in lowest to highest order, but I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, look at number 3. Step 1, make sure the equation is set equal to 0. Man, that one is not. So we have to do that. In order to get set equal to 0, we just have to get everything off that side and 0 on the other. So I'm going to subtract 48 from both sides. So I get x squared minus 8x minus 48 equals 0. And it's in standard form. Okay, so make sure it's in standard form and set equal to 0. Yay! There's step 1. Step 2, factor completely. So we're going to factor this. Pause yours. Try and factor that on your own. Go. Okay, when factoring it, the factors, the pair that worked was 4 and negative 12. Wrote it in expanded form. Okay, so it's 4x and negative 12x. And you might have that in a different order. But no matter what, when you factor it, you're going to get 4x, x plus 4, and x minus 12 is equal to 0. So if you need to pause it and look back over what I did, that is fine. Okay, now we have it factored. That's step 2. Step 3, set each factor equal to 0. So I always have to set them both equal. Now I just solve. This one's pretty quick. So I get x is equal to negative 4. And x is equal to 12. Write it in set notation. Okay, good. Hey, let's look at the worksheet that goes along with it. I picked a couple. Since you're not with me in the room to pick them together, I picked a couple to do together. So looking at number 10 is what I'm going for. And it's the worksheet that looks like this. And again, you don't have this printed off, probably. So you might just pull it up on Schoology, and you can print it. I'll let you decide that. Or you can just put it on a piece of paper. It's fine with me. You'll have more space. There's not a lot of space on these. Okay, so look at this one. Let's look at our steps. Make sure each equation is equal to 0. It's not. So the first thing I have to do is I have to move that 7. Now, I'm going to get 7r squared minus 14r plus 7 is equal to 0. Now we're going to, step 2, factor completely. When we factor completely, the first thing we should always look for is the greatest common factor. And do I have one? Yes, I do. It is 7. So then if I take out a 7, I have r squared minus 2r plus 1. Okay? put 7 down here, or you know what, I'm just going to put that 7 over here, kind of in an answer box. It's not my answer box, but I'm going to forget it if I don't. I'm going to factor this. So 1 times 1 is 1, and I get a negative 2 down here. The factors of 1 are 1 and 1. Since this is positive and this is negative, my signs are the same, so it does actually factor. Okay, so we have r squared minus 1r minus 1r plus 1. So we take out an r, we take out a negative 1, so we get r minus 1 times r minus 1. Wait a second, hold on. R minus 1 times r minus 1. That means that's r minus 1 quantity squared. Okay, I started to write that and I realized. Okay, so now let's take that back out as an equation. Okay. I still, even though there's no variable here, I'm still going to set it equal. So I have to set every single thing equal to 0. Okay, I'll tell you how to deal with that. Now this one is going to be both answers. In math, what that's called is a double root. That will make more sense in years to come. But this is going to give me 2 of the answers. So I only have to set one of them equal to it. Does 7 equal 0? Is that possible? No, that's not even possible. But if we write it down, sometimes I will have a variable out here. So I have to be aware of that. Okay, so I'm always going to write it down just to make sure I write down every single factor. Then I'm going to add 1, so I get r is equal to 1. That is my entire solution, is 1. It happens to be what's called a double root. And again, you'll get into that at some point. Okay, I picked another one, number 13. I was trying to go for what looks yucky. So here, I think this is something that looks yucky. I know I'm on number 13. And so do I have 0 on the side by itself? No. That means I have to move a whole bunch of stuff. And what I'm looking at is I'm going to kind of analyze. My k squared term is going to be my leading coefficient. I want it to be positive so I don't have to factor out a negative. So I'm going to add 5k squared to both sides. So I'm going to move that. I also have to move that 3. I have a negative 3, so I'm going to add 3. So I'm going to add 3. So I get, what is that line for? I don't know. I'm going to add these two together. I get k squared minus 8k, and this goes away is equal to 0. Oh, that is 8k. That will make a huge difference in solving this. Okay, k squared minus 8k is equal to 0. Okay, so we have 0 on the side by itself. We accomplished that. Now, we are going to look for the next thing we do, factor completely. To factor completely, I always look for a greatest common factor. Do I have one here? Yes, I do. It's k. Okay, I can't factor that any further. That's done. So now I'm going to take every factor and set it equal to 0. So k equals 0 and k minus 8 equals 0. This solution, there's one of my solutions. It's already done. It is a solution, though. So be very careful. Don't think that, oh, I came up with 0. That's not a, nope. If I have a variable, that is one of the solutions. Whereas on this 7, that's just a false statement. So it's not part of the solution. 0 is. Now here, I'm going to add 8 to both sides. And I get k equals 8. So my, and that's another solution. So in my set notation, I'm going to have 0 and I'm going to have 8. That is my answer. Okay? So just a couple questions. If you're in the classroom, I'd have you do a few more, but we're not. So if you have questions, you know where to find us. Thank you very much.